Hey Raiders, this is Brandon with Retro Archaeology. Set up this shot, and my dog Nitro here has to be in your lap, which I'm not complaining about. So you might see him in the course of this video, or maybe he'll get up and leave, or maybe the mail will come and he'll start barking at the mailman. But I wanted to do a video just kind of recapping the year 2023 for me. It was a year I absolutely loved for movies. Honestly, one of the best years for film and just my experience with film and movies in a long, long time for me. When I first got into film, I was in high school. I was a junior in high school. I took a film studies class. It really changed the way I thought about movies. We watched Citizen Kane. We watched North by Northwest. We watched um, um, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I had to think about that one for a second. We watched a bunch of movies and just dissected the shots, dissected the story writing, and it really changed the course of how I thought about movies from that point on. I've always loved movies. I've never really had a lull in my love for film, but I would say 2023 is one of those special years that just really kind of rekindled a passion of movies that I had somewhat lost for a little bit. I'm a big superhero fan. Don't get me wrong, I love the Marvel movies. I like certain DC movies. But the thing about 2023 is it kind of feels like we're turning the page a little bit, where audiences are not going to superhero movies as much as they used to. And it does kind of feel like studios are starting to notice. I feel like we got a lot of great original movies and just good filmmaking, good storytelling that was a little bit breaking the norm of just 10 superhero movies in a year. So I'm fine with turning the page on the superhero genre that we've been in for the last 15 years, and especially if the next couple of years are a lot like the year 2023 in terms of the quality of movies that we got. So this video I thought would be great to just kind of recap my top 5 movies of 2023 that I saw for me personally, and also my top 5 older movies, but were first time watches for me. Movies I had never seen before. Watched a lot of older movies and wanted to just kind of share my experience with what stood out to me in what I watched this year. Going back to the year 2023 being such a highlight year for me personally with watching film. Bye, Nitro. I actually tracked every movie that I watched this year. It's funny because I started the first half of the year actually writing things down in a notebook. And then the second half of the year, I started Letterboxd, which is something I wanted to do for a long time. But I had a running count. So it's not quite December 31st yet, so I can't give you my final numbers. I might watch a few more before the year ends. But I watched over 180 movies in 2023, which I'm super proud of. I kind of gave up on TV this year. It's the least amount of TV I've ever watched. I was just in such a film mood. So let's talk about, I guess, first, my top 5 new movies of 2023. So this list is stuff that came out this year. I believe everything I did see in theaters on this list, and went to a lot of movies in theaters, which were great this year. So number 5 on my list, I have to go with John Wick 4. I love the John Wick franchise. I've been a fan since the first one. My dad actually watched the first movie and then said, "You got to see this movie. It's an awesome action movie." Ever since then, we've been huge fans and we've seen all the sequels in theaters together, along with my brother in law, Justin. The fourth one did not disappoint. They continue to raise the bar in this franchise. The addition of Donnie Yen was fantastic. I thought it was a fitting conclusion for the character of John Wick, although I really would love a fifth one. My idea for the poster or beginning of John Wick 5 is that his fist just literally comes up out of the dirt of the gravestone and John Wick is back. But I thought the fourth one was as good as any of the other ones. The action was incredible. John Wick climbing that never-ending staircase and falling back down at the end, along with just that little bit of a twist at the end, is something I'll never forget. Awesome experience. Saw it in IMAX, which really was just fantastic action movie. So that's number 5. Number 4 on my list, I have to go with Killers of the Flower Moon. I'll be totally honest that I had fallen off Martin Scorsese a little bit. Not as a fan, but just I've not kept up with some of his last couple films. I still need to see The Irishman, for example. I'm hoping to go back and watch that soon. But when I saw Killers of the Flower Moon come out, was really ready to go see this in theaters, and I'm so happy I did. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro absolutely crush it in this movie. Let's not forget, gotta look up who the actress is. She was so good, yet I can't remember her name. I feel terrible. Lily Gladstone, that's it. Lily Gladstone was right up there with DiCaprio and De Niro in this movie. Her performance, like the roller coaster she has to go on and you have to go on watching the film, is extremely emotional, extremely powerful. And just, I loved the cinematography in this movie. I loved the soundtrack, even though it was not always in your face. It was definitely very driving throughout the movie. And just De Niro. De Niro being that snake that he can be and play it so well. He really stood out. DiCaprio, I love him in everything he does. You'll hear me say this if you hear me talk about movies. DiCaprio is my favorite actor. I always look forward to his movies. He's not like Johnny Depp was in his heyday, where he could always play a different character, or Tom Hanks can play anybody. I feel like DiCaprio can play really versatile roles, but it's his emotion, like it's his line delivery, it's his facial expressions. Those are what really draw me into his performances, and he's top of his game in Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese killed it with this movie. I can't wait to see it again. The theater I saw it in was not my normal theater, and the sound was not as good as my normal theater, so I'm looking forward to kind of cranking it up when I get a physical copy. Let's go to number 3 on the list, and it's one that's probably on a lot of people's top 5 lists. I'll talk about just my personal experience with it. I've got to go with Oppenheimer. Huge Christopher Nolan fan. Every movie of his is a cinematic event. I remember going to Chicago and seeing Dunkirk at the Music Box Theater in 70 millimeter. Every time he has a new movie come out, it just feels like you've got to go see it. It's a cinematic event, it's a cultural event, it gets people talking. The quality of his filmmaking stands up there with anybody. So seeing Oppenheimer, which I did see as a double feature on the same day with Barbie, something you had to do in 2023. Seeing Oppenheimer in theaters was sensational. The moment that really stands out to me, and one of my favorite movie moments ever in a movie theater, is really when the sound cuts out, when the test bomb goes off. I'll never forget how quiet a packed, I mean, basically sold out theater was. You could hear a pin drop in that moment. And I just remember how tense I felt. And then the rush of sound comes when the explosion wave from the bomb happens. And it was just movie magic. Powerful and terrifying when you think about the subject matter, but it was movie magic. And Oppenheimer was just so well acted, so well directed. One of the best physical media releases of the year as well. It's amazing how quickly that came out, that we could experience it in theaters, but also watch it at home. Just a huge release, and my number 3 favorite movie of the year. So we're down to the top 2. We've got 2 movies that are very different, but insanely creative in what they were able to accomplish. Number 2 for me is Talk to Me, the horror movie that just had tons of legs this year. I remember seeing the trailer for it and instantly was like, okay, I've got to go see this. But until you actually watch Talk to Me and see how brutal and visceral and intense and creepy and just how great the actors are, the characters are, you really don't fully know what you're getting into. Talk to Me is one of the best horror movies I've seen in the last decade. It's creative, it's directed incredibly, the visuals are strong, the performances are great, and it really feels like it sets up more to come. They've already announced the second one. I know some people are against sequels. I'm actually really curious where they take Talk to Me. I think there's a lot of different directions they could go with it. It was just such a breath of fresh air in the horror genre, and just was such a powerful movie-going experience for a horror movie. It was one that I can't wait to watch again. I've still only seen it the one time in theaters, but Talk to Me really stood out as one of the best horror movies we've had in a long time. So finally, we're at number one, a movie I can't wait to talk about in terms of being my favorite movie of the year because it came just the last couple months. It's Godzilla Minus One. The Toho. Whoops.
Is Godzilla here?
Yeah, Godzilla just responded. It's Godzilla Minus One. Godzilla Minus One is the only movie I saw twice in theaters this year. Couldn't wait to go see it a second time. Godzilla Minus One was a movie I did not watch a single trailer for, which is something I highly advocate doing at least once. Maybe you realize it's not your thing and you just have to see the trailer. I highly recommend though, like if there's a movie you know you want to see, don't watch the trailer. I went into Godzilla Minus One, a Godzilla fan, excited to see it, but didn't watch anything, didn't read anything about it. And going into a movie with that completely clean slate really just sets you up to completely ride the roller coaster. And Godzilla Minus One had the best human story of really any kaiju movie I've ever seen. I actually teared up both times I saw the movie in the theaters at the end of it. It's that powerful from a human perspective. And then if we just want to talk about the Godzilla perspective, it's so amazing. The look, the feel, the power, like Godzilla's scary in this, that Toho and everybody involved with making this movie was able to accomplish on a much lesser budget than Hollywood gets, especially for the legendary monster pictures. It's amazing what they accomplished. This Godzilla is so visceral, like so brutal, actually intimidating for a Godzilla. When he first does his atomic breath, which is amazing, by the way, the spike coming up the tail. He does it in the assault on Tokyo. There's a giant dust cloud and it's like acid raining down and you see the giant plume of smoke and they pause on a moment of him just like gazing up at it before letting loose a giant roar. And the imagery of it's just incredible. It's amazing that we got to World War II set films in 2023 between Oppenheimer and Godzilla Minus One that deal with nuclear fallout, deal with radiation, deal with the human aspect of that in completely different ways. And as I've said, have both cracked my top 5 of the year. So if you haven't seen Godzilla Minus One, can't recommend it enough. It was my favorite movie-going experience of the year. I had goosebumps at multiple points. There's rumors that we might get the US black and white re-release that Japan is getting, and I'll probably go see it a third time in theaters if that happens. Cannot wait to see what a potential Steelbook release might look like for Godzilla Minus One next year. So that's my top 5 new movies of 2023. As I mentioned at the beginning, I just loved going to the movies this year. Some honorable mentions, like we got the Super Mario Brothers movie. That was fantastic. The animation was incredible. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was so much fun. Again, amazing animation. Kind of a sleeper movie that I didn't expect to love as much as I did. Gran Turismo was an awesome racing movie. David Harbour, loved him in Violent Night last year, see him in Gran Turismo this year, and I'm definitely in the camp where I'm predisposed to like almost any movie that David Harbour's in, but he's so much fun in Gran Turismo. The race scenes are amazing. It's such an incredible story. That was a big sleeper hit for me. And real quick before I sign off on this portion of the video, I want to just give a shout out to Wonka as well. I grew up on the Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie. Love that movie. Like, just sparkles your imagination, you know, like the song Pure Imagination. But I was a little nervous going to see Wonka. I thought the trailers looked overly computer generated. Definitely didn't know about Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa. I loved the movie. The songs were great. Hugh Grant was actually really fun. And Chalamet was absolutely perfect as Wonka. Real quick, total aside from my favorite movies, but if we could normalize or bring back the frequency that like theaters give stuff away, can I just say I love that? I actually got a scratch and sniff Wonka poster that my theater had when we went to see this. And it was just, it's so fun, like going to the movies, having it be an event, and like actually leaving with something. My wife and I actually saw The Abyss the 4K remaster, the one day release it was in theaters, and they gave out posters for that. It's really fun. It makes it more of an event. I definitely remember seeing like Hateful Eight, Quentin Tarantino movie, and they gave out like a roadshow book. So it's just really cool when we think about like making going to the movies an experience and bringing in more people. I think if theaters can continue to like have cool giveaways and merch like that, like it really just makes it a more memorable experience. 2023 was awesome. I literally cannot wait to see what new movies come out in 2024. So for the second half of this video, I wanted to talk about my top 5 first-time watches. So what I mean by this is movies that were not 2023 new releases. A lot of these on this list are actually older movies, but movies that I watched for the first time that had been on my watch list for a long time, were movies, you know, I've been wanting to see for a long time, or movies I just didn't expect to watch and really love this year. Because I think we're all on like our own little personal movie journey too. We all have those movies that we talk about with people and they're like, you haven't seen that? And you file it and I'll get to it someday. And when you actually get to sit down and watch something that you really enjoy, whether it be a 3-decade-old movie or a movie that came out last year, and then you really like enjoy that ride, it's as good as going to the theater. Like you're adding to your repertoire, you're becoming a fan of something that you weren't before. In a lot of cases, like me, I'm eager to rewatch those movies. So let's get into my top 5 personal first-time watches, movies that I saw this year that were really my favorite at the end of the day. So number 5 was early in the year. I watched Magnificent Seven from 1960 with my wife. She had seen it before. I'm a big Western fan, but I have a lot of Westerns I still need to see, especially a lot of classic Westerns, and this was one of them. It was incredible. Like, I can't believe the cast in this movie. It's so hard to pick a favorite. Everybody just contributes in a unique way. There's humor, there's drama, there's camaraderie, there's like great action, and just the theatricality of it is such a spectacle. Absolutely a quintessential Western if you haven't seen Magnificent Seven. Really loved it. Would love to watch it again. It is a long movie, but it goes by fast, and it's a really interesting like exploration of different personalities and everything coming together. There is actually a 4K Walmart exclusive steelbook of Magnificent Seven coming out early 2024 that I'm thinking about grabbing. So if you haven't seen it and you want to get a physical copy, next year is a good time too. My number 4 favorite movie I watched at home this year was 1988's Black Roses. This is a movie that I saw through The Last Drive-In. Joe Bob did it. And I had never heard of it. Never heard of Black Roses. I had actually never really dove into like the 80s hair metal horror genre. And Black Roses was my first introduction to that. And boy, did it get me addicted to that genre. I will definitely watch anything that's 80s horror, rock and roll themed movie. So watching it on Joe Bob was amazing. Like his accompaniment and commentary on the movie was a ton of fun. I'm a big 80s hair metal fan. I actually loved the band Lizzie Borden. Didn't even know that they were featured prominently in this movie, their music at least. So I was instantly hooked there. But Black Roses is a ton of fun. It's so quintessential, like 80s rock and roll. The soundtrack is amazing. The practical effects are amazing. The band scenes of them performing are tons of fun. And I actually had to get the VHS once I saw this movie and I saw what the VHS looked like. So this is one of my favorite physical tapes that I bought this year. Black Roses is so unique from a VHS perspective because it literally has a 3D box. This protrudes, it's got texture to it. It's really one of the coolest VHS that was ever made. So after I saw it on Joe Bob, was super lucky to get this for a pretty good price online. Got this on eBay, and it's in pretty good shape. Awesome kind of 3D cover for that one. Number 3 on my list is The Abyss. Didn't watch this one at home, but it counts for this list because it's not a 2023 movie. The Abyss is a fantastic James Cameron film in a filmography that is just ridiculous. I wish he was making other movies besides Avatar at this point. You know, those are spectacles and fun in their own ways, but when you really go back to his 80s and early 90s films all the way through Titanic. I think his slate of films is just incredible. So I'm a huge Terminator fan. Aliens is one of my favorite movies. Terminator 2 is a movie I grew up watching over and over again. Titanic is a movie that I absolutely love. Um, Grew up on that as well. True Lies is tons of fun, but the missing link for me has always been The Abyss. Never seen it. It was a big deal that it got a 4K remaster that came out in theaters. The 4K disc is coming out in early 2024, but it had never been released on Blu-ray. So if you wanted to watch The Abyss, you were watching either a VHS copy or a DVD copy, or maybe there were some bootlegs out there. So when I found out the theaters were doing a one-day event of The Abyss, my wife and I got tickets, and so unbelievably happy we did. If you are someone who loves the James Cameron movie Titanic, watching The Abyss felt like all of his skills from Aliens and The Abyss are how he was even able to make such a massive movie that the Titanic was. But The Abyss is such a good sci-fi movie. It is such a good movie that's at times rooted in reality, but there is a very like mystical, magical element to it. And it has such a good message. It almost feels like James Cameron withheld this movie from being released for so long, because we like need to hear the message of this movie at this point in time with everything going on in the world with wars and just the turmoil that's going on. The message at the end of The Abyss is so powerful. I was blown away by Ed Harris. What a performance. I know this movie was hell for him. I know he does not look back on it fondly, but when you just watch his performance in this movie, it stands out. And it was great to get to see Michael Biehn just kind of doing what he does so well in this movie. It was outstanding. The 4K restoration was awesome in theaters. I know a lot of people are freaking out about all the James Cameron 4K discs that are coming out early next year, that they're overly denoised and things like that. I've got high hopes for the disc of The Abyss because it looked really great in theaters. So we're down to my top two favorite movies that I watched at home or were new to me because I didn't watch The Abyss at home. And number two is one that I'm really excited to talk about. So one of the new podcasts that I started exploring this year is called the Video Archives Podcast. It's a podcast that Quentin Tarantino hosts with a good friend of his, Roger Avery. They usually talk about a couple different movies. And what's really cool about the podcast is Tarantino used to work in a video store. He actually bought out the supply of the video store, and he has a huge tape collection. So all of the movies that they watch on the podcast, they're actually watching from the VHS copy that used to be in the video store that they both worked at in the late 70s, early 80s. So I started listening to this podcast and realized I had not seen almost every movie they were talking about. And I still found a lot of joy in like hearing them talk about movies. But one episode I listened to, they talked about the movie Dressed to Kill. And what's cool about the podcast is they actually take some time to like describe the VHS. This clamshell version from Warner Home Video is the copy that Tarantino has that they watched on the podcast. And after I listened to the episode, I knew I had to see this movie. And I kind of wanted to watch it like they did. So went on eBay, found a copy of this, bought it, and I watched Dressed to Kill for the first time on VHS. It's a Brian De Palma movie, and I cannot tell you how blown away I was from a first-time movie watching experience. I grew up a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan. When I still had a DVD collection, one of my favorite pieces was this big Hitchcock box set, and I went through Alfred Hitchcock's entire filmography and just love so many movies that he's made. So when I found out and watched Dressed to Kill, which is so Hitchcockian in so many ways, and De Palma did some of that intentionally, he's a huge Hitchcock fan, I really felt like I was watching a 70s Hitchcock movie like turned up to 11. Dressed to Kill is suspenseful, it's horrific, it's beautifully shot, it's just an extremely interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the best suspense thrillers, horror movies I've ever seen. And it's widely regarded as an American giallo, which we don't have many of those, at least by Tarantino and Roger Avery standards, that really can fit that criteria. Dressed to Kill absolutely does. It's got that kind of like similar mystery, murderer, unknown killer vibe that all of the Italian giallo horror movies have, and it does it extremely well. Dressed to Kill was unbelievable to watch this year. Last but not least, ready to share my number one favorite movie that I watched for the first time, and that prize or title has to go to the 1981 horror movie Possession. So, real quick, do my best to remember all the cast names, at least main characters, but Isabelle Adjani. Hopefully, I'm saying that last name correctly. Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill, which most people have seen at least one Sam Neill movie, probably Jurassic Park. But this is like a much younger Sam Neill. Possession from 1981 was another movie, like I said earlier, with Godzilla Minus One, that I went into with no knowledge. Didn't know what it was about, hadn't watched the trailer, didn't know anything other than I knew Sam Neill was in it, which was almost enough for me to put it on by itself. So went in completely blind. One of my best friends, Anna, had watched it and for months had been telling to me, like, you have to watch Possession. Did you watch Possession yet? Finally did. And I might as well have sat there the whole movie just like with my jaw on the floor because it is such an emotional roller coaster. The performances between the two leads, Isabelle and Sam, are two of the best like co-starring performances I have ever seen. They are both just a tour de force in that movie. Where the movie goes is totally unexpected. It's totally twisted. There is a one take scene with Isabelle where she is just captivating. You cannot take your eyes off her performance, off her reaction, off her body language, off her intensity. It's one of the best 2 to 3 minute sequences I've ever seen in a movie, and one that is absolutely burned into my memory. Possession was just such a great first watch for me. I know a lot of people consider it one of the best horror movies of all time. It's probably in my top 10 after watching it this year. Just outstanding. So if you haven't seen any of these movies that I've named, highly can recommend all 5 of them. Absolutely fantastic and unique in their own ways, and just 5 out of many movies that I discovered this year that really stayed with me. So thanks for listening. If you watched this whole video, hope you got to thinking about like what stuff you saw this year and what stood out to you and what made an impact to you. It was awesome to take in movies this year and just go on these journeys of storytelling. Watching Dressed to Kill, like I realized I need to see all of Brian De Palma's movies because I love his direction. I love his storytelling. So I've got a bunch of his movies on my watch list that I hope to check off soon. And I think that's what's really fun when you really kind of get dialed in with a director that you love and you get to kind of explore other movies in their filmography. It's just such a fun experience. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Please comment. Like, I'd love to hear like what were some of the best things you watched this year, and let's get a dialogue going, and hope to make more videos for you soon.